do want to ask you guys about office hours. I'm going to give everyone a chance to join in. So if I do forget to ask about office hours, someone remind me before the end of class so I can start that poll. Um, so, um, hope everyone had a nice Labor Day weekend. Hoping that everyone's got at least their back end started. They've got some SQLized connections to the database. They're thinking about their first endpoint. Hopefully, you're integrating some data in your capstone. We do have a check-in coming up on Thursday. So a reminder that we will be looking for something full stack happening in your app on Thursday, right? So we want a create and read endpoint. We want to see that data showing up in your front end. We're going to want to see um, maybe a login system working that isn't a requirement for this capstone check-in, but you do have everything that you need to know for that. You can either do that with Clerk, which is the whole workflow that Ryan taught, or you can use kind of our less secure login system. Either one is totally fine, but the goal for Thursday's check-in in 2 days is just to have something full stack working and that data showing up on your page. So the ability to create something and then the ability to read that from the database and show it in React. So does anyone have questions about the capstone check-in that is coming up? Okie doke. So we've got a couple things that we got to cover tonight. We are going to dive into making the blog project work with an edit, because that is something that we have not covered yet. So what happens when we make a post and then we want to go back and change that post? So we're going to start there tonight. Then we're going to level up into uploading a file into the database because a lot of your capstones, when you are creating something new, you also want the ability to upload a file, whether that file is a PDF, whether it's an image, whatever it is. We are going to do an example tonight. Gets a little complicated because we have to get fancy with fetch and how we submit the data, but we're going to do that example tonight. We are also going to getting into seeding the database. So that is basically saying, hey, we've done that with a user, right? We said, check to see if this user account exists. And if that user account doesn't exist, go ahead and create it. Well, what happens when you've got a lot of data, right? What happens when you've got 50 rows or 1,000 rows of data that you need to get into your database? Well, we're going to use the JSON file format and show you guys how to import that into the database, right? So when the server just first turns on, go check to see if that table is empty. If that table is empty, go read this data from the file on the back end, and then go ahead and create all of those rows in the database. So that is where we are headed. Does anyone have any questions about that stuff before we dive into our code? Okie doke. So we will start with editing a file tonight, or editing a post. I don't know how far we're going to get. We should get definitely the uploading a file started, but editing a post and kind of seeing that flow can get a little complicated. So we are going to start there, and then we will also spend some time tomorrow kind of going through how is all of this working, right? So we did that asynchronous diagram last week, right? Where we just opened up diagrams.net or draw.io or whatever it's called, and we started drawing all of it out. That's the level that we want to shoot for, right? So that when we are looking at our application, it isn't yeah, I kind of remember doing this in class, but I don't really know how to do it myself. That's not the level we're shooting for. The next level after that is I can kind of do it myself, but I can't really explain it to anyone else. Still not quite what we want. We want to get to that point where I can point to any line of code and you can explain to me what that is doing, right? So during tomorrow's class, the goal will be, hey, let's make sure that we fully understand this application. We can bounce around between the different numbers. We understand what the flow is, the order that it happens, all of that kind of good stuff. So we will generate out a diagram as part of tomorrow's class to make sure we really have that level of understanding. I believe the capstone check-ins on Thursday will go pretty quick. Please plan on showing up. This is not a capstone check-in that I want to do a bunch of one-on-ones with, right? So please plan on being in class on Thursday. If you cannot make class on Thursday, please send me a video of where you are at in your capstone in advance, right? I don't want to have to hunt you guys down for that. Um, with all of that said, Nathan will be in next week, so you only have to deal with 3 days of me this week. Nathan will be covering all about full stack deploys. After full stack deploys, we have a review week. That review week is kind of up to you guys to decide where you need help, whether that's in your capstone, whether that's a concept that you're just struggling with a little bit, whether that's something that you'd like to see how I would approach it. That review week is kind of your last shot to get caught up, get any assignments in. We definitely will be reviewing your grades before we do graduation certificates. Then Laura comes in, and then we have our last 3 nights of real class time, right? Which is all about those last minute capstone questions. And then graduation is right around the corner. It is the first Thursday in October, which happens to be October 3rd. So believe it or not, we are right around the corner. This is week 20 of 24. Okay, last chance for any questions tonight before we dive into our code. Okay, let's go ahead and get started then. I'm going to head into my week 19 day 3 code. And let me just make sure that I have Ryan's latest code. Okay. So I'm going into day 3. I'm going into my backend. I am going to delete out my node modules. If you have it, you probably do. I do not because I pulled it from Ryan's code. So if you have your node modules in the front end or the back end, go ahead and delete that. Go over to my front end, find your node modules, delete that. Then I'm going to go up, grab my entire day 3 folder in week 19. I'm going to make my week 20 and go ahead and paste that in and then rename that to day 2. I'm going to pop my front end open in VS Code. I'm going to pop my, no, it's going to take a minute. Front end's open. Back end is being a pain in my butt. Back end is open. I'm going to open an integrated terminal and do an npm install. And same on my front end, open an integrated terminal, npm install. That will get us our node modules back. I am going to start my front end. And I'm also going to start my back end. And I'm going to have some errors on mine because I don't have clerk set up in my local project. So if you have this error message missing publishable key, you can follow these steps. You should not have this problem, though, if you followed along with everything that Ryan did. So I am going to fix this in my source app.js. I'm going to just comment out this line here. And I'm also going to, ooh, I'm going to have problems with this. Okay, you guys can use your week 19 day 3 code. I'm actually going to use the code that doesn't have clerk in it because it's going to cause me some problems. So give me 1 second here. I'm going to grab the day 4 code instead. Should take care of that. Okay, live share links coming your way in chat. All right, live shares are live, so you guys can join them, and we should be good to go to dive in. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started on our edit option. So if I am in the front end, I would like to be able to edit these posts, right? Maybe I don't want this to say B anymore. Maybe I want it to say C. Well, I don't want to really put an edit button on each one of these posts. Instead, what I want to do is be able to uh, open one of them and make this edit link work here. So if I click edit, it does take me to edit post and it knows what the ID is. Okay, how is that working? Let's go find that code. So in the front end, when I am in my read post option, I scroll down and I find the edit button. The edit button is pulling in the ID for the link. Where is that ID coming from? That ID is coming from up here from my use params. Where's my use params coming from? That's coming from React Router DOM. Well, how does the DOM know what the ID is? How does the router know that? Well, if I go to my app.js and I look in my read, I can see the ID is specified as a parameter because it has the colon in front of it. Okay, well, where did that one come from? Well, that came all the way up on my home.js when I looped over each one of the posts right here in post preview. I pulled the data from posts in state. Posts in state get set all the way up here when my page first loads to go get the posts. So where does that line up in my index.js? It lines up with my server get posts. Go find all of them from post. Where does post come from? It comes from my db.js. What does db.js reference? It references my post ID all the way up here. So that is a really long path, but really important to make sure that we understand how all of that is connecting. The ID in the database model goes to my find all here, which is including the ID here, which gets called via a fetch request here, which gets the data and sets it into state here, which then updates the post in state here, which then maps over to return each post preview here. The post preview here goes in and includes a link to the read post, including the ID here. When we click on that link, we go to app.js and we tell it the read link is going to include the ID param here. We access the ID param using use params here, which comes from the router. We then take that ID and pass it into the edit post link down here, which ultimately will take us to the edit post page, which is here. Okay. Lot of trickling all of that information down. Does anyone have questions or to get lost on any one of those steps? Okay, so all the way up in app.js, in my edit post, I need to change this URL a little bit because we aren't using timestamp anymore. What are we using instead of timestamp? We're using IDs because the IDs are getting generated by the database. So I can change my path here in my app.js to an ID. Once I have that ID changed, I can go into my edit post, and instead of using params to get the timestamp, instead I'm going to use params to get the ID. Then I need to say, hey, based off of that ID, I need to go get what the information is because I need to be able to pre-fill the title and the content, and the author we don't need to do anymore because it's based off of a signed-in user. So we need to go to the database and say, hey, go get whatever the existing content is so we can change that content. And when we save it, it will overwrite into the database. So that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to come in here and we already have get individual post. Let's see what that is doing for us. Get individual post is already going out and grabbing the ID, grabbing the JSON of that, and returning out the data.post. So in here, we console log out the matching post and then set the post. Let's see if that is working. So I'm going to go into my inspect. I'm going to go into my console. And now what I have is a promise. And I'm like, well, I don't want a promise. I want the data itself, right? So what I believe we need to do is throw the word await in here. But now we've got a problem. We can't use await without async. So what we need to do is say const make API call is going to be an async function. And it's going to do all three of those things. Get the individual post, console log it, set the post, and then we need to make the API call outside of the function, but still inside the use effect. I'm going to save that, come back over here, refresh, and now we get a different error. Timestamp is not defined because we don't want to use the timestamp anymore. We want to use the ID. It's also a problem on 37, which we'll get to in a second. So, pausing there, make API call is a new function. We can't forget to call the function. Then we can add in the await keyword and change our timestamp to an ID. We still do have an error in the front end. Timestamp is not defined, but if you refresh, you should see the data in the console. If you can see the data in the console, you are caught up. And obviously, if you have an error, happy to help.
What's the expected output? Just to see the
Just to see the object that's got the content in it in the console.
so all the posts.
Should only be one post.
Yeah, like show up after I hit the edit button, right?
Yes. Your URL should say edit post one as the URL, or edit post and then whatever ID number you're on.
Sorry, can you run through that one more time? I think I missed something.
Yep. So all the way up in app.js, make sure your edit post is using an ID up here. And also make sure that when you click the edit button on a post page, it should say edit post and the ID number at the end of it. If that is good, then what we are going to do is in edit post, make sure the use params is pulling out the ID instead of the timestamp. Then we are going to do this new make API call function that is async and move these three lines that were already there into that make API call. We need to throw the word await in front of get individual post because it is an asynchronous API call. And then we need to make sure we are making the API call down here. If all of that is working, the expected output, whether or not you have an error, is fine, but you should see in your console the object of whatever we created.
Um, I don't see the edit or delete button. I think I either A, missed a step when we were putting in the login stuff, because I think in the read post.js, since it's not hitting the is logged in true,
Yeah, so if you don't have
should be all the way down
these
the bottom.
buttons right here, you probably have a ternary statement there that you can just comment out so that the edit button does show up.
Oh, so just take out the whole window that local storage.
Yeah, for now, you could always go back and add it, but you would need to decide if you're going to use the clerk system or kind of the basic window local storage system that I had developed. And if I haven't made it clear yet, clerk is definitely the more secure option.
So I'm getting uncaught and promise failed to fetch.
Well, go ahead and share your screen. It's probably going to be a problem in your back end.
Okay.
Okay, so failed to fetch. I'm gonna request remote. So it is going to post, it's going to one, so we know the ID is good to go. I'm gonna take a look over here, and now it's got a problem with your SQL statement, and it says invalid input syntax for type integer of undefined. So what it's basically trying to tell us is in our index.js, we are trying to get not all of the posts, we're trying to get the specific post. In order to get that specific post, we need to use the params ID. And for some reason, that was empty. So I'm gonna stop this and re no, I'm gonna stop this and restart it because what I think happened was you had a invalid request in the front end that crashed the back end. Then you fixed it in the front end, but needed to restart the back end. That's
Gotcha.
my working theory. Let's see if it's correct. Ah, working theory confirmed.
Sweet.
There's your data that you're expecting. So if anyone else has this error, line 37, timestamp is not defined, we're going to fix that next. So you were good to go. Good work.
I still don't think I'm getting the right output here.
Go ahead and share your screen.
Sure.
Okay, so go read more on any one of them, then edit. And it looks like your edit button. Oh, you know what it is? Go to edit posts.js, and there's an if statement that redirects you if you're not signed in the use effect up at the top. The 13 to 15. Go ahead and comment those out as well. And yeah, your post.
Oh, I didn't take out the accounting log.
Nope, still a problem. All right, let me see your front end code. Get individual post. You are not, you made the make API call function, you forgot to call it.
Oh,
So right here, make API call. No, where did you come from? There we go. And there you go. So you're good to go now. Anyone else need help? Expected output at this point. It's okay if you have an error up here, but you should see the content that we edit or the content that we're trying to edit down here, and it should be filling in our form fields now.
was the fix for Austin? I had that same error. I just removed timestamp and put ID there. Is that all that we're doing?
Um,
On ours, it's line 37. Yours might be different.
it is on 37 for me. We're gonna modify this pretty heavily. So we can actually we're gonna take out everything in this between the prevent default all the way down to the navigate. So we are moving on to the next step. Last call for anyone who needs help. Okay. So if you do have this error 37, which I'm assuming everyone does, it's in this edit post, and it's confused because it's still trying to find the post by the timestamp. But it's got all this local storage BS, and we don't need that anymore, right? Because all of our posts are stored in the database. We don't need to work with local storage anymore. So we still need the event prevent default because we don't want it refreshing the page. We're taking care of the API call. So we're going to take everything after the event prevent default out all the way down to the navigate. So leave the navigate in, leave the event prevent default. Everything else is going to go here. So go ahead and clear that out and save. And that should get rid of your error. The last thing that I want to do is take out this author tag, right? Because we eventually want our author to be based off of who is signed in. We don't want to base it off of just an open text field that we let anyone type into. So I am going to go down to that author text field, and I'm going to delete this entire div. So on my code, it is now 80 to 95, but it is basically the label for the author and the input for the author as well. So go ahead and delete out that entire div right there. So the only thing that should be left is the title and the content in our form. Okay. Now that we've got that working, we have to actually make this data send back to the API. So we are going to say const res equals await. Because we have an await, we need to add the async. So up in my edit post, I'm going to throw async before the word event so that it knows this is an async function. And I am going to fetch, not get, fetch to HTTP localhost 3001. I am going to go to the post. I am going to say the method that we are updating is going to be a put because we are putting new data to the database. Our headers are going to be a content type of application JSON, and our body is going to be a JSON stringify of our post. And if you want to copy this, the content, the headers and all of that kind of stuff from any other API call, totally fine to do that.
Is there a way to, I guess, like have a cloud version of the databases or have it not stored locally?
Yes, and Nathan will be teaching you how to do that next week. That is part of the deploy process. Okay, no way to really test this yet because we need to go match this in the backend. So we're going to head back over to our backend code. And the order of these can matter, but as long as we are being unique with our URLs and our method types, they won't overlap at all. So it doesn't really matter where you put this in terms of order. If you put it here or you put it down here, it's all, as long as the URLs are unique, combined with the methods, you're fine. So I'm going to just do this after my server.post posts, but it doesn't really matter where you want to do this. So I'm going to say server.put, and we are going to put an individual post, which is going to get a async rec res. I'm going to throw my res.send in before I forget it, because no matter, even if you're not sending back any specific data, you should always send back something so that the request gets the response. And then all I'm going to do is console log out my rec.body. So I want to just make sure that this flow is all working, that I'm getting the content that I'm expecting. So I save that. I come over to my browser. I will type in A1 and B1. And when I click the edit post button, I should get some data back here. I can see I have an object with my post. My post includes my ID, and I've got the title and the content here. So that is good to go. I'm excited about that. Redirected me to my homepage. That's okay. I'm going to click read more. I'm going to go to my edit again. I've got some work to do in my backend. It didn't save the information in that I wanted, but I am able to confirm that the updated text fields did get sent into the backend. And in order to see this, reminder that you do have to hit the edit post button so the front end makes the API call. Pausing there. Anyone have questions or need a minute?
Not getting the object back. Oh, that's a new thing. Never mind.
Coolio. Okay. Anyone one else have questions? Okay. So now we have to make the query work, right? So we've seen create before, we've seen find, but we haven't really done an update. And so I could pull this out of my memory banks, but I do think it's important to remind you that documentation is really important, right? So, yes, ChatGPT is great. And if you're using a library like Sequelize that is super popular, ChatGPT will probably be able to help you out as well. But fun fact that I learned today, a ChatGPT query takes 10 times as much electricity as a Google search does. Kind of mind-blowing to think about that. So, want to show you where we can find this in the Sequelize documentation. So, all I need to do is Google Sequelize update query. And the first thing that comes up is update queries in Sequelize. Now, it does give me a warning. This is for the unreleased V7 version. We aren't on that, right? We are on the latest version. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And then I have to manually go over here to the, seriously, querying, update queries. Okay. Querying, querying. Well, this is really making a case for ChatGPT, isn't it? Okay. Took a little work, but I got there. Um, It is under core concepts, model querying basics. And then over on the right here, there's like a sub table of contents almost. And I'm looking under simple update queries. So simple update queries is showing me the code here, right? It's saying, hey, use that model name. The first thing that gets passed is saying, how do I find what you are trying to update? So we're going to use the ID for that here. And oh, I'm sorry, this is what we are updating. And this is saying, well, which one should we update it on? So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and instead of console logging out the rec.body, we're going to say, await my post.update. What do I want to update? I want to update the title to whatever the rec.body.title is. And I want to update the content to whatever the rec.body.content is. Now, where do I want to apply that update? I want to apply that update where the ID lines up with the rec.body.post.id. And I made a mistake here. If you look at my console log, I put all of the data in this object called post. So, mistake that I made, this should say .post and .post. Okay, so await my post.update, set the title to the title that's in the post in the body, set the content to whatever the post is in the body. Where do we want to update this in the database? Where the ID lines up with the rec.body.post.id right here. And we don't need to send anything back because the front end is going to take care of getting all of the most recent posts. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And if everything is working, we are going to edit our post and say A1 and B1. Go ahead and hit the edit post button, and we should see A1 and B1 showing on our homepage.
I think I need. Oh, never mind. My post was not capitalized.
Austin.
I was still trying to copy down. You said we're changing something to dot post somewhere.
Yeah, so every rec.body here should say dot post and then title or post content post ID. Proof that I actually am writing this code live. And if this is all working, your edit flow should actually be fully functional at this point.
I am getting a fetch error.
Go ahead and share your screen.
Thing on window?
Interesting.
I don't think
So whenever we get a fetch error, we always check the back end. The back end's up and running, so your problem's not there. So we're going to look edit post line 31. Content type.
Oh.
Almost had me on that one. That was a close one. Okay, now we crash to the back end. So now different problem. And that was the one that you were asking me about. It's rec.body dot
Oh,
post
okay.
dot title.
Okay. Sorry, I misheard.
It's it's a long. Oh, and you got a post here.
Oh, yep.
All right,
Cool.
let's try that. So save, always make sure that we got no errors before we go retry it. Refresh A1, B2, edit post. And all the way down here, it's now up to date. And so you are good to go.
Sweet. Thank you.
Anyone else need help? Anyone else want me to run through this code one more time to see how it's flowing?
Yes.
Okay. So I won't do the entire thing, but all the way up in app.js, we have added in two route parameters, one for the read and one for the edit post. That is what is telling the router, hey, when we're in the URL and you see a number part of the URL, that isn't actually the letter's ID that we're looking for. That is a number that we are pulling out. That gets trickled down. We access that ID in our read post. We grab it from the params of the router and we pass that down into the edit button. The edit button takes us to the edit post where we get access to the ID the same way. Now, we got to think about what's going on here. This edit post is just a blank form to get started. All it knows is the ID is 4. It doesn't know the ID 4 has a title of this. It doesn't know the content of it. It knows none of that. All it knows is that we are supposed to be editing ID number 4. So what do we do with that? We say, hey, when this page first loads, you may want to do some authentication stuff. If you guys don't have that, that's okay, but can integrate that down the road. After we make sure the user is signed in, if we are checking for that, we say, hey, go get the individual post using the ID from the params. Well, what does this get individual post do? We put that in a file called lib because we need to do this in a couple different places. So we just move that code out. That is called abstracting the code away, so that we can access we can rerun that function without having to do it in a bunch of different places. Well, what's get individual post doing? It's going to post ID doing the JSON work and then returning the data.post for us. Where does this come from? Well, we didn't specify a method, so it's defaulting to get. What does that line up with? Well, if we go over to our backend, over here, the server.get is using the post, the model in Sequelize to find the item based off of the ID in the params. So when we send that post back, we grab that post here and return it to wherever get individual post is called. Well, get individual post is called right here. and we're setting that data into state. Well, what does that post state use? Well, if we go down here and look in our form, the input values are using the post title and the post content. Where is all of that data eventually coming down from? It is all coming down from our post title and content right here. So we draw the line right there. We go, we just did our read operation. Out of create, read, update, and delete, we did the R of the CRUD. That read is what is filling in our form. We haven't done any updating yet. All we did was pull the data from the database, store it in state, and tie that state to our inputs. I'm going to pause there. Does anyone have questions on that before I go through the update flow? So hopefully you're getting a light bulb moment here of, oh, if I have many things in my database, I can create one edit page and make that edit page work for all the different types of things in my database based off of that dynamic ID in the URL. That ID parameter is what is making all of this magic work for us. One edit page could have a million posts, and that one edit page is going to handle all of the different posts for us. Okay, now what happens? We come in here and we update the content in state. When it is in state, it is only in the front end. So whenever we are updating that data, when we're filling out that form field, it isn't actually updating in the database yet. In order to get it to update in the database, we submit this form that goes to edit post. Edit post then does a fetch and takes all of the post data that is coming from state. So this post now has our updated title and content because those are tied to our inputs. So we take this data, we tell the server, hey, we're doing a put, so it's not creating a new thing for us. It knows what we are trying to update, and we make sure the URL matches. We do have to tell it we're sending in JSON. We do have to stringify it. This now lines up over in my index.js to do a put. Okay, now what do? We say, hey, we want to update the title and the content based off of the rec.body.post. Where is this post coming from? That lines up with this post right here. Well, how does it know what title and content are? Because we tied that in the on change to the title and the content right here. So we say, hey, go update those two columns based off of where the ID is lining up with the rec.body.post.id. What all of this means is that if we pop open Beekeeper and take a look at our local DB and change our local DB to the blog project and look in posts, we can see in here A1 and B1 is updating. Not only is it updating there, but in the front end, we navigate them back to the home page. Well, what does the home page do? It goes out and makes an API call to get all of the posts. All of the posts over here is doing another query to go get the posts. Now that is including the updated post that we just did right here. So once the data is saved into the database and we redirect them to the homepage is going to go get the absolute latest posts and it is going to send it back on the homepage like that. I'm going to pause there. Absolutely critical that you guys are asking questions at this point, right? So if any part of that flow is not making sense, now is the time to ask questions. Trust me, as you're going over this video, as you're trying to get this flow set up in your capstone, future you is going to thank you for asking questions now if you have them. Okay. We are going to move on. We've got two other things we got to accomplish tonight. The edit flow is all working. That's cool. We have to do two more things. I want to cover database seeding, and I also want to cover file uploads into the database. The file uploads into the database is a pretty complex topic. So what I'm going to try and do is cover database seeding now, and then do the file uploads to the database after break. Sound good to everyone? Cool. All right. So I'm on my blog and I'm like, this is cool, but I only have 2 posts in here, and I want more than that, right? Um, And that's especially important when we may get to 20 different posts on the page. We may have the page be too long, right? We may need to tweak the layout of it. We may need to say, hey, only load the first 20 posts. Lots of stuff in there, but I don't really want to like duplicate this. I would actually like there to be 20 posts in my database. So the way that we can start that is by using ChatGPT. Because if we look at our posts in the database, whether you do it in Beekeeper or you do it in um the model, we can see every post has a title, a content. The ID is going to get generated by the database for us, and then it's got the author ID. But author ID is okay to be null, right? We don't have to specify an author on every one of them. So I'm going to try something I have not tried before, which is I'm going to ask ChatGPT to generate this out for me. So I'm going to go to ChatGPT and I will share the results of this so you don't have to write this same exact query for me. But I am going to say, generate an array of 20 JSON objects that have a title and content, uh, that have title and content keys. Damn it. And the values um should contain example blog posts. Oh, see what happens. A little slow, but it's getting there. Now, of course, you could modify this query and say, make them all programming related, right? Or make them about my hobby of, I don't know, miniature shipbuilding. I don't know why I just came up with that. But this is generating everything out that I need to get going. So I'm going to let it finish. Could always say, make the content no longer than 1 sentence or something like that. Should probably have just done 10, but we're here. Okay. So I'm going to scroll all the way up to the top and I'm going to use this copy code button. I'm also going to throw this in. No, I'm not going to throw it in the Zoom chat because it's too long. So I'm going to upload it in the Zoom chat instead in 1 second. I'm going to go over to I'm going to go into my db.js folder. And inside that, I'm going to create a file called seeddata.json. I am then going to paste in all of my content, and I will also, no, I will also send this in Zoom. So if you would like to use the ones that I generated out, I just uploaded that file. You can download that file and move it right into your db.js. Okay, now I'm going to go back into my db.js and I am going to await this db.sync. Joe, it shouldn't be a problem that yours are longer because the front end clips it substrings it out on the homepage. But if yours are longer, it shouldn't be a problem.
No, I was just saying that I used the same prompt on 4.0, and I got a paragraph for each of them. Nothing, nothing groundbreaking. Just wanted to point it out.
Yep. Okay. Now I'm going to come down here and we're writing some Virgin code here. So I actually don't have any reference for this. We're going to just see how this goes. I am going to say, hey, go get const existing posts. And the existing posts are going to go to await a post dot find all. And if the existing posts dot length is under 5, if there are not 5 posts that are created yet, we want to go do something. What do we want to do? Well, I am going to go up to the top. It's got to be up in my imports. I'm going to import my seed data from /seed data.json. And JavaScript is kind of mad with me because it's like, whoa, cool your jets, buddy. I don't know how to import JSON. I work with JavaScript. JSON is not JavaScript. So we can kind of cheat here and say, hey, we are going to specify that we need to oh, I can't remember if it's an assert. Oh, hold on. Give me a second. With okay. In your node terminals, do you guys have version 22 or above? Yes. Okay, cool. So, you have to add this with type JSON. And what that is doing is it's telling Node, hey, this isn't just a regular JavaScript file. There are ways to use a regular JavaScript file to accomplish this, but oftentimes we are using JSON as our data source. And so this is just telling the import system in Node, it's helping it out and telling it how to import that data in. If this works, we should be able to go down to our if statement and console log out the seed data. And if you save that, you should see all of the posts in your seed data. Keeping in mind, if you do have more than 5 posts already in your database, this if statement will not run. So you may want to go to Beekeeper and delete out some of the posts or up your threshold to get that if statement to run. Okay, now that we've got the seed data, we've got to loop through it to create each one. So we are going to say for const each seed of the seed data, await a post.create, and go ahead and pass in each seed. So I save that. It doesn't look like anything happened, but if I go over to my beekeeper and refresh my post table, I should have all of those posts created. And I can go over to my front end and I should see all of my posts hanging out in the front end. Okay, that went way quicker than I thought it was going to. We did our import up here. We told it that it was JSON. Then we wrote some code to say, go get all the existing posts. And if there are under 5 posts in the database, our seed must not have existed. So go ahead and loop through each one of the seeds and add them into the database. There are ways of doing bulk inserts into the database, but for this small amount of data, this should be totally fine. Okay, any questions on any of this stuff? Anyone not get all of their posts created here? Okay. I am going to do two things. I am going to start a poll for office hours. I can find where that window went. Seriously, Zoom, where are you hiding it? Oh, there it is. So if you would like to attend office hours, either remote or in person, check off the, oh, do you not have check off? Hold on, I screwed that up. Yeah. Oh, I did. That's weird. They call it multiple choice. Okay, that's dumb. Go ahead and vote times that work for you for office hours for this weekend. Work on your capstone, can ask questions about past assignments. Please select all of the times that work for you. When you are done that, you can go do they're not restricted to in person. I will have the regular classroom Zoom link open, and you can attend that way. I will be at Common Space though for anyone who would like to work in person. And depending on the time of day, I will probably show up with donuts or beer. Just throwing that out. Um, so whatever time works for you guys. Um, the other thing I wanted to say, oh, go do attendance. The attendance secret word tonight is Molter. No, that's too hard to spell. It's seed, SEED. We'll get into Molter the second half of class. That's how we do file uploads. I can do office hours weekly until the end of the program. I will poll every week though, just because I know people's availability changes week to week. But I will definitely consider office hours. Okay. final call to, oh, you're all voted in, so that is good to go. Looks like there's a slight preference for Friday and Saturday. So I'm gonna say let's do Friday at 6 p.m. for this week. And then based off of turnout, we can always pick a different time for next week. So office hours, Laura doesn't have office hours this Friday, does she? I'm gonna take that as a no. Okay. So we'll do Friday at 6 p.m. I will have beer at Common Space, or you are welcome to tune in remotely from the Zoom classroom link. Put that in my calendar before I forget. Okay. Let's move on to the next thing. So this will probably be the last thing for the evening. This is really complicated to pull off. There are lots of little changes that it takes because we need to modify how we upload the file to the backend. The backend basically gets the file in all of these tiny little pieces and sticks it all together. Then we take that and store it in the database. When we pull it out of the database, we've got to do some even more additional work to show it in the front end. So storing files in the database is usually not recommended. Old school, I shouldn't say old school. It is usually preferred instead of storing the file in the database itself. Instead, what we are supposed to do is store the file in the actual file system. Then we take the path to that file in the file system, whether it's Finder or Windows Explorer or whatever you're using, and you send that data back. However, that is even more complicated to do than the method that we are going to use, which is taking the file contents and shoving that in the database directly. There are pros and cons to both methods. So I just like to preface this of saying if you are scaling this up to dealing with large files or several thousand files, this approach needs some thinking. But spent a lot of time 2 cohorts ago trying to come up with a method that was understandable but also executable and would work for how we deploy starting next week. So I want to warn everyone that this is a bunch of little steps. If you are not planning on uploading a file at any point in your capstone, I recommend that you either go along for the ride or drop out of class tonight and show up tomorrow. So if you have done attendance, the attendance secret word again is SEED, SEED. You are welcome to head out early. If your capstone deals with uploading files, or you want to just go along for the ride and not follow along with me, that is also completely fine. This is one of the most advanced topics that we will cover in the entire curriculum. So I want to preface everyone with that. Does anyone have questions before we dive into trying to get all of this to work? Uploading riders info count. Um, if it is a form field in your database, right? If you're talking about it's an input type text or a text area or anything like that, the attendance secret word is SEED, SEED. Um, so if you are uploading a basic form, right, and it is just text or numbers that are going into that form, you do not need to handle file upload. However, if you are uploading a profile image or the rider's image to be able to identify that rider, that is what would count, right? So we're talking about anything where you click the choose file button or need to upload a photo. That is what we will be covering in the second half of class tonight. It is usually something that you can say, hey, you know what? I got other things that I got to prioritize in my capstone right now. I'm going to focus on getting those working. And if I can already get all of that working, I can always come back and try and get file or image uploads working down the road. So it is a little scary. At any point, you guys know that you can always tell me, slow down, take a break, re-explain that. I need a second. I'm going to try and go through this slowly, but there are lots of little steps. So the overall thing is actually not that challenging, but because there are so many little steps, it's easy to get lost in them. So that's why I just like to preface that. I do not have expectations. I'm not going to get to the end of the night and be like, now please turn in your code with file upload working. I am not that mean. Want to expose you to it and give you guys a chance to ask questions, but am not expecting you guys to have this nailed down or be able to do this on your own without following the code. So, any questions before we dive into that? We are going to take the 10-ish minutes to get our front end set up, and then we will go on break right at 7 o'clock. Okay, let's head back into our front end code. I'm going to focus on getting this working only in new post. I am not going to worry too much about getting this working in the edit post option. So in the maybe I'm going to change my mind on that. Maybe I want to get it working in edit post. Give me a second to be indecisive. I could swear the reference code was in here. New post. Okay, it is. So we've got to do some work here. I am going to be careful here because we need to basically break things before we get the new things working. So I'm going to go to Finder. I'm going to go back up to my day 2, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that. And it's going to take a second because I have all of my node modules in there, which is okay. And when it's done, I'm going to rename my day 2 copy as day 2 no file upload. I don't want to rename this day 2 yet because that day 2 is going to be the one that's already open in VS Code and what we're going to add to. So I'm going to go into my day 2 no file upload once I have it duplicated. And I'm going to go ahead and delete out my node modules on both of them just so that they aren't taking up space. Now I've got 2 copies in my code. So if you're trying to understand the entire blog flow, you can go into the no file upload one. Don't have to worry about getting lost. This day 2 one is going to be the one with the file upload. That's the one that we're going to break before we can fix it. Okay, so I'm going to close out. I'm going to go over to my front end and I'm going to get to work in my new post file. So instead of pulling out the form here, it turns out that JSON really struggles with sending things other than arrays, objects, text, strings, numbers, that kind of stuff, right? When we try and send an entire file, it really struggles with that. Well, it turns out there's something in the browser called form data that can really handle file inputs much better. So what we're going to do is we are going to come down here, and instead of making the post, I am going to say, hey, instead of making the post, make this thing called form data, which is going to come from new form data, which is going to come from the event.target. Form data is like window local storage or new date. It is something that is built into the browser. So we don't have to install anything for that. It knows how to work with that form data. We are then going to take out our headers entirely. And in the body, we are going to send back that form data to the backend. When we don't specify a content type, the form data will actually be the default type that gets sent into the backend. Little harder to work with on the backend, but it should send in all of the information that we're looking for. Now, the last thing we need to do is come down to the very end of our new post. I'm going to add a new div class name MB3. I am going to create a label. And it'll be HTML for an image. And the class name will be form label. And we'll add the word image in there. And then we will also do an input type file and add the name of that called photo and an ID called image. And we will go ahead and close that off. Go ahead and save that. Pop over to your browser. Go ahead and click into the new post. And you should see your title, your content, and this new image, choose file, no file chosen. Not the prettiest thing, right? But that's okay. We have that showing up. Two other things that we need to modify. The form data element really likes to use name instead of using ID. So we're going to come up here and add a name to each of these, one for content and another one for title. So do your name title. Don't do title input. It should just be name title. Name content on the text area. And finally, make sure you've got your name photo hanging out down here. Go ahead and save that. Again, 3 names on the page, name for photo, name for content, and name for the input type title. Input type text for the title. Okay, once you have all of that done, go ahead and head over to Unsplash or go grab an image from your computer. We're specifically working with images here, but this flow will work for any type of file eventually. So I'm going to just grab unsplash.com, go grab a free image. Doesn't matter the file type, whatever it is. Just make sure that it is copyright free so that you are allowed to use it without any issues. All right, we got everything done on the front end that we've needed to do. Now we have to go modify our back end. So in the back end, we've got to work with that new post. So what we're going to do is we need to get the server set up to deal with that file type, that form data file type. So I'm going to go to my backend. I'm in my terminal. I am going to Control C to stop it because I need to install a new package. And the package I am installing is called Multer, Multer. I did just paste it in the Zoom chat. And I'm going to go ahead and hit enter on that. That should only take a second to install. Multer is what is going to help the backend deal with that form data. Then I'm going to npm start the server back up so that I don't forget to do so after I install. Then, just like we install cores and import it up here, we also need to do that with Multer. So we are going to import Multer from Multer. Fun word to say 5,000 times in a row in class. Then we're going to come down and we're going to say server. No, we're not. We're going to say const storage equals multer.memory storage. Don't forget your parentheses at the end here. This is basically telling Multer how to work. When that file gets uploaded, it's going to come in all of these tiny little parts. The browser breaks that apart for us to make the uploads more efficient. But when the server gets it, it's like, where do I store all of those tiny little parts? If you want to, Joe, you can uninstall it from your front end. It's just an npm uninstall Multer and then restart it. But it shouldn't cause any problems as long as you don't import it on your front end as well. So in your back end, we're definitely need to install it in the back end, not the front end. So this memory storage is basically the easiest way to tell Multer when all of those tiny little file parts come in. Don't save them to the hard drive. Don't store them in some weird place. Just keep them in memory to get started. That's the easiest way to use it. Then once we got that storage created, we say, hey, the upload is going to come from Multer using the storage we just set up. And finally, we want to tell Express, the Express server, to use the upload. And when we upload, we are going to upload a single photo. Again, this is a photo file flow. This will work very similarly for PDFs or other things that you would need to upload to your server. Little changes that you would have to make, but for the most part, this should hold true. If you save this and have no errors in your console, you just have a connected to DB, you are good to go on break. You do have errors, go on break anyway. We'll be back at 7:25 and we can take on solving them when we get back. Pausing there, go on break, be back at 7:25. Off.
Fixing
So,
problems that we've had.
you've got problems, Joe?
Sure do.
Go ahead, share your screen.
We got lost in the kerfuffle with mixing up installs and then mess something up.
Let me see your back end.
Might have been this that I oh no, that's right.
Multer is not defined. You need to import Multer from Multer.
Is it just
Yep, you got it. And you're good to go. The front end will be broken until we update the endpoint.
and should I be able to see a new post screen? Because I don't.
That is going to be hidden by your however you've got your login set up. So on home.js, We've got a ternary operator for if you are logged in, then show the logged in screen. Home.js line 64-ish for me. Yeah,
Oh,
so your local storage isn't set to yes there. So if you comment out 66 and then 84 through 86, that will give you your new post link. And then on new posts, you have to comment out if not logged in the use effect.
where did you-
That whole use effect can go.
oh, the whole use effect can go.
Yep. Good to go.
Cool. Oh, there's something here.
Anyone else need help? Okay. You're good, Joe, right?
Yeah, I think so. If it
Cool.
was just getting that screen set, I think of it.
Okay. So we left off on we've got our choose file set up. We've got our server set up to do this like memory storage stuff to handle the photo. Now we need to update our endpoint to save that photo details in. But we need a place to save it. So in our blog backend, we're going to go modify our post.js. So I'm going to go into post.js and I'm going to add two new things here. An image, which is going to be my favorite data type, a blob. And what is a data type of blob? It is basically just setting up the database to say, take whatever I throw in here and just keep track of it. It's going to be something big. You don't need to know what type of data it is. It's just, I'm throwing a blob in there. Keep track of that blob for me. The other thing that we need to keep track of is the image type. And this is, you can think about this as like the file extension. An image type could be a JPEG, it could be a WebP, it could be a PNG, it could be a GIF, it could be all kinds of different stuff, right? So that is going to be a data type of string. When we add that in, we do get the database connection failed. That is because it says error column image does not exist. Well, we could go in Beekeeper and make that exist, but if we go to db.js, down in our sink here, we can throw our alter true into that sink. When we add that in, that will get rid of the error, but we don't want to leave that alter true in. We want that to run once, we want to save it, but we only want to put that alter true in when we are intentionally modifying the tables in our database. Otherwise, you get into some weird stuff when you're working on your model and it's constantly updating stuff and you lose data and it's not pretty. So go ahead and put your alter true in your db.sync, and then go ahead and move that back out in a comment. And you will notice that it is connected to DB and has no problems from there. Okay, now we've got a place in our database to shove the data. Now we got to do the actual shoving. We got to actually save it in there. So I'm going to go back to index.js. I'm going to go down to my my server.post posts. And so nicely, we could just throw in the body and it was JSON and it would save in. Those days are gone. Now we got to work for it. So we are going to say up here, it's always a good idea to make sure the person isn't uploading a ginormous file, right? You wouldn't want someone to go into your blog website, even if they're an authenticated user, and let them upload like a 50 gigabyte file, right? That would cause havoc on the database. You can run out of hard drive space, all of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if there is a rec file, and the rec file size is greater than 50. How many zeros are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. So a 5 and 5 zeros after it. I think that measurement is in bytes. Don't quote me on that. But it is basically saying, hey, just check to see whatever they uploaded before we save it. Make sure that it isn't ginormous. If it is ginormous, return res.send error file too big. Else, go do this stuff here. And now we need to break this out a little bit. So instead of just throwing the entire rec.body in, we're going to break this out. We're going to say the title is still coming from the rec body title. The content is still coming from the rec.body.content. But now we've got some more stuff we need to work with. We need to put in the image, which is coming from the rec.file.buffer. I'm actually going to throw a question mark in right there as well. This buffer is what is filled in by Molter. So the buffer is basically a space in memory where it's holding the uploaded file, all the different little pieces of an uploaded file. We are also going to store the image type by using the rec.file again, but this time we're going to use something called the MIME type. We've seen MIME type before when we do application JSON. So when we see content dash type application JSON, that is a MIME type. So this image type is also coming from Molter. It's something that it is detecting and storing for us. So we know what kind of file extension to use when we pull that data out. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And we get no errors. So that's a good sign. But this code isn't actually running yet. So what I'm going to do is go back to my front end. I'm going to go to the new post page. I'm going to say post with image stuffs. I'm going to go grab that image that I downloaded from Unsplash and drag it on top of the choose file. Or of course you can hit choose file and grab the file right here and hit open on that. And then I'm going to hit create post. Now, it doesn't look like anything happened. But if I go into Beekeeper and look at my posts and scroll all the way down to the bottom and refresh, okay, legitimately nothing happened. That's disappointing. So now we debug. Um, Key. So we're gonna throw some console logs in here. Rec received. File too big. Create in DB. I'm gonna see which one of those we get. So try this again. New post. 1, 2, grab my image, create post, rec received, and file too big. Interesting. How big is that freaking file? Okay, it's only 3.7 meg. Um, So let's console log out the rec file size and try it again. And the file size is that. So we're going to take that and we're going to multiply it by 5. So you want to update that. We're going to say files that are, because this file is 3.7 meg big. So we'll just make the limit 5 times bigger than whatever this file size is currently, just as an example. Okay, let's try that again. So I'm gonna new post. I'm gonna do with an image, cool pick. I'm gonna grab my image. I'm gonna hit create post. Now I got create in DB. And if I go to Beekeeper and refresh, I get with an image cool pick. Kind of interesting though, if I scroll over, it did detect my image type JPEG, but look at what's in here. Oh, I can't even look at what's in there. It just froze Beekeeper. So look at this giant block of all of these random letters. This is what actually the JPEG standard is using to convert all of this data into pixels that we can see. So if you ever force an image open in VS Code or any text editor, that giant block of text is actually what you will see that the image is encoded as. That's okay. All we're doing, that's the whole point of the data type blob. Don't try and keep track of what data is in here. Just know that I'm giving you a whole bunch of data. Keep track of it that way for me. So I'm going to pause there. Does anyone not have their image showing in Beekeeper? And when I mean
Uh,
showing, I mean that giant text blob showing.
I do not.
Okay.
I'm having an issue with my database connection.
Okay. And you did your alter true?
Yes.
Okay, share your screen. Um, failed, missing column. Why is your alter true not working? Throw that back in for me. Oh, await. Throw the word await before your db.sync. You gotta wait for the syncing to be done before you go do other stuff. Okay, now you got a different error. Um, Post foreign key author ID 3 is not present in table users. So request remote and go look in Beekeeper. Can you drag that over? Excuse me. And it's saying that in your posts, there's a reference to 3, but user ID 3 doesn't exist. So if we just go to posts and change this one to 5, and then of course you have to remember to hit apply down here. Now that should fix the problem. So we come over here, we restart. Good to go. So take your alter out and then go ahead and try your image upload. You were good to go. Anyone else need help? Okay. So the good news is we are right around the corner of finishing this up. Once we get this data here, we are making everything work. We've sidestepped JSON. We're using form data instead. We had to get Molter set up to deal with that form data. We've got it in memory storage. We take that in memory storage. So just like when we use server.use express.json, and when we put that in, we get access to the rec.body we do down here. Well, what we are basically telling Express is we can also use a upload, and that upload is going to work with form data instead of JSON in the body. So we get all of this set up. We tell it how to handle a photo upload. We come down here, and when we create that new post, we include the file buffer and mime type or meme type or however you pronounce it, the MIME type. It's an acronym. Okay, we got all of that created. Now we want to make our image show up on the front end. The kind of beauty of this, though, is when we say, hey, go get all of the posts, we're including all of the data that is included in the post. Well, that data is including the file that we just uploaded. So we don't actually have to modify anything on the back end to see that file. On the front end, though, we do need to do some work. So in our, we want to make that image show up in our homepage. No, we want to make it show up in our read post. So I'm going to go back over to the front end. I'm going to go to read post, and I'm going to say, all right, I want the image to show up between the content and the timestamp of it. So maybe I throw another HR in here, and then I'm going to go into JavaScript mode. So I put my curly braces in there, and I say, if there is a post from the post in state, if there is an image. If there's not an image, just skip this entirely. But if there is an image, what do I want to show up? I want an image tag to show up. And this is where it gets a little funky. Well, this is the easy part. Just wait for me to type this whole thing out. You will probably want to copy and paste this, not type it yourself. The style is pretty easy. We want to say, hey, the style shouldn't get any bigger than 100% of the page. But this is a little where it gets funky. We say the source is going to come from this data, but the data needs to start with the post.image type. That's coming right from the database, right? So that is going to literally drop an image JPEG for us. Then we need to tell it that that image type is base 64 encoded. It's really getting technical there, but it's basically saying, hey, this is how we took that image and turned it into a string. Then we say, hey, that base 64 is going to get generated from a buffer. So where did we see buffer before? We saw buffer when we uploaded, right? We stored the buffer right here. Well, we now need to basically reverse that buffer out so that we can put it into the page. So we say buffer from the post.image.data. And then finally, we say, hey, take that buffer and turn it to a string, which is base 64. And this should be post in state. And if that by some miracle worked, if I open up with an image cool pic, I get a failure because I need to import buffer from buffer. And buffer needs to be installed, so I npm install buffer, restart the server, import buffer from buffer. And by some miracle, the image shows up. Okay, so let me review those steps. Before you forget, Control C to stop your front end server, npm install buffer, restart your server, import buffer up here. Don't forget these curly braces because buffer's a little mofo and won't export the default. So you need those curly braces up there. And then finally, you can come down to where you want your image to show up. And you do this work in here to take the image from the database and drop it into a source tag that the browser can understand. And with
I,
all of that said, you should be able to click on the read more of the post that you just created with the file upload and actually see the image in your browser.
I am getting an issue. Module not found. Error cannot find file index.js does not match the corresponding name on disk.
Stop your front end server and restart it. And if that still doesn't work, share your screen.
It is pointing to node modules, it looks like, that maybe I had an issue installing.
Front end code, please. Request remote.
Yeah, maybe it didn't install correctly.
I like that theory.
Hey,
Nice work. Okay, that is all that I can teach you about file uploads. If you need anything more than that, go find another expert because you've tapped the limits of what I know about file uploading.
well, on that note of you not knowing anymore, I have a question that goes further into file exporting.
Yeah.
Um, I took a class through Duke University,
Hmm.
which does the very basics in JavaScript, no other frameworks or anything. I remember maybe it's just having it point to an interaction with the backend that's different. It seemed a lot easier to upload a file in that.
Yeah, so uploading a file isn't the problem in the front end. It's what you do with it when you get it in the back end.
Gotcha.
Because what the browser is doing for you is they're generating out the form data, right? And the form data itself isn't hard to understand. But what they aren't telling you is the browser is actually breaking that file up into a bunch of substrings, basically. Then the server gets one of those tiny little substrings and was like, what am I supposed to do with this? And so what the Molter does is it takes all of, it's called a multi-part file upload. It takes all of those multiple parts of the file and reassembles them together before it puts it into the database. And so that's why it's a lot easier on the front end. The front end, all you do is you go, well, input type file, go send that file to the back end. The problem becomes, well, now that I've got it on the back end, what am I supposed to do with it? And the database actually supports storing it pretty well, right? The blob isn't the hard part. It's I've got this file that's uploaded in all of these tiny little parts. I need to reassemble it in memory, store it in the database, be able to pull it out of the database and send it to the front end. And we know the front end doesn't like sending anything other than strings, right? So we got to send the entire file as a string to the front end. And then we have to reassemble that string on the front end to be in a file format that an image tag can understand. And that's basically what we're doing.
Now, what file types can it say? Is it just reading the metadata from that file?
Yes.
Gotcha. So
So
I can do this with a PDF.
it will support anything the image tag I don't know will support a PDF, but anything that an image tag will support will read off the MIME type and do the right thing. So that's why it's important to have those two columns in the database, because the text itself, the blob that we put in, doesn't have the metadata of the type of the file. So that's why we have to store both of them, because when we pull all of that data out, we can't just hand that to the browser and go, here, show this in an image tag.
Right.
We
You
have
gotta
to
tell
say,
what to do.
exactly, show this in an image tag. And by the way, it happens to be this type of image.
Sounds straightforward.
Now, what we could do as a level up is make it so that you could click on a link to view the image, and that would open it in a new tab. That's going to require some chat GPT. And if you are sobbing from your brain hurting right now, I would recommend that you drop out of class, because I don't know that I'm going to be able to pull that off efficiently, but it's what you're going to need, Joe, to get your file uploads to work.
I'm gonna. Oh no, yeah, you're right.
Because I
Dang.
don't think a PDF will show up right in an image tag. And what you really want to be able to do is click on, open document and have it pop open in a new tab.
I don't know if I mean I want to do that. I'm trying to think of what the current state software is doing right now, and I don't think it opens like that. Maybe. Well,
Well, if it doesn't open in a new tab, it downloads the file.
right, yes. I think that's what currently happens. I'm trying to think if there is some. Yeah, I don't think that there is a open a new tab option.
Um, so is there one that you would prefer over the other?
Yeah, I'd rather have it be able to be opened and downloaded. That seems like the right thing to do.
Okay, opened in a new tab, and then you
Yeah,
could hit the download button from there.
yeah.
Okay, so for that,
I mean, I would just need to have it pass, like make a new component
um, you
that
got to do um,
then have the body of the component be the file and then
um,
pass.
hold on, give me a second to think about this. Create an express route that uses a blob from Sequelize to send back a downloadable file.
The further we get into web development, the more conversations out of context don't make any sense.
What's that?
So the more we get into web development, the less these statements make sense out of context.
Okay, so download ID, find it. This is what I was looking for. So you set the content type and then you send the data and you make it listen. Okay, so that is exactly what I needed. Um, I don't know
Right.
if
I'm just creating a new endpoint, right?
yeah. Did this query make sense to you?
Share your screen.
Oh, that might help.
Const data types require supervised. Require path you okay. Files equals to file name group type string run all data long. Is
So
long
we're
necessary?
probably only if it's a big file. I've never had to do that. Um, and then this is really the guts of it. So we're gonna do a server dot get, and we're still going to do it to I don't know, uh post image maybe. And it's going to include the ID. It's going to be rec res. It's going to find the post by PK. And then it's going to set these headers. And then file name is something you would have to play around with. So like some image dot JPEG, or you know what, we'll do it as a PDF just to play with it, and then send back that. And then this, I think I can actually send back as the post image type. I'm saying image, but that's just because it's that column. And
Uh,
then yeah, so let's just try that. So if I go localhost 3000 and I do a new post, Uh, and then I go, do I have, and I upload an example PDF that is, so it breaks because it's in an image tag, but it's ID 26. So I think if I do localhost 3001, because it's got to be on the background, backend, post image 26. It failed.
oh,
File is not.
did you update? Did you alter the table? You made new columns, right?
No, no new columns. But this it needs to be post dot image. I don't know that it's gonna like data. That worked.
Okay. Let me grab. So what changes that you just made it to the where are you?
And then for this, what you could do on the front end is you could do something like um here you could say a href is going to come from localhost 3001 down, what did I call it? Post image ID, and then target is blank, and then download file. And now if you click download file,
Does the
oh, it
target?
is just downloading it. It's not actually opening it in a new tab.
Oh yeah, I thought target blank. That was the whole purpose of target
It
blank.
it has to deal with how I'm sending it back. I bet you if I don't do it as an attachment, nope. Oh, inline instead of attachment. There you go.
Alright, so, but you just make a new. All right, so that new dot get and index. Do you mess with anything else in DB for that?
Nope.
And then you made changes in repost. It was just the link.
Yeah, just this A tag. You are going to have to deal with file name storing as well, which we aren't storing in the database right now, which is a can of worms on its own. Um, and what you could do is you could just make the file name have the ID of the file from the database. So that would work. But if you want to make sure that whatever file name they upload is also the same file name that they download, you do need to add a third column in the database for that.
One more time. What was that last part? Need to make the sure what name is the same.
So you can cheat and just say, oh, the file name here is going to be like whatever the ID of the file is in the database. But if you don't want the file to download as like 161.pdf and you want it to download as whatever file name is that they uploaded, in addition to the file content and the MIME type, you also need to store the uploaded file name on creation. And then you have to use that file name right here when you download it.
Oh, I gotcha. So I just need to throw it in a variable.
Yep. Well, and store the variable in the database on upload so that you can pull it out on download. Class tonight just went from like everyone still enrolled, just lost them as I funneled down.
Yeah, I must be the only person doing anything with PDFs.
Which is okay. Saves you a one-on-one because I'm sure you could have figured this out with ChatGPT, but let me tell you, before pre-ChatGPT, this would take me an entire class to figure out because file downloads are just a little pain in the butt.
Sure seems like it. Alrighty, I think I got everything in there. Oh, I need to this way.
Anything else you need? And I will commit this into source tree so you can reference that, or into GitHub so you can reference it there too.
I think that's all I had for my stuff specifically. Yeah, this small. Oh, well, that makes sense. We just had it in there. What are they called? The empty tags?
Target blank?
No, just the
Oh,
community.
it's called a React fragment.
Yeah. I was wondering why my code is wrong. React. Okay, I think that should work. I have a correct. All right, so there's a download that work if I have. All right, yeah. Well, that seems to work. Aside from the download part.
Yeah, if you do inline, it should open the image in a new tab, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so that's what just happened. I didn't
Okay.
have a. It didn't download it, but let me see if I can just read the test PDF.
Well, if you just change, you have to change in the back end. You change your inline to attachment, and then it should download it. Just watch because I have this file extension hard coded. In my backend, I hard coded it as PDF.
I made a new one. I just made
Okay.
a new a whole new server knockout for this. Great. Yeah, I think I got everything now.
Cool. And then
All
have a
right.
good night, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
All right. Have a nice night.